Previously on the Project Umbrella podcast.
The gameplay is monotonous, it's not really fun, not really well explained.
I just wish this game was non-canon.
It just seems fashionable to hate this game, and it's really not that bad.
It's a form of erotic comic, because a friend knows his stuff about that.
Friend knows his stuff.
With guess what? A TriCell logo on a wall.
Biohazard 3, horror in the horny tentacle mansion.
Is it canon?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Gotta be more Canon than Umbrella Corps.
Project Umbrella.
Hello and welcome to episode 36 and season 3 finale of the Project Umbrella podcast, removing all those who purport the Wesker clone theory in a brutal manner, and when it comes to doing what we can do to win Olympic gold, a piss in the diving pool went very wrong. My name is Nick, better known as Neptune. Let's see who's joining us today for the podcast. We can confirm that he has a library in his hometown. It's Batman.
Hello.
His local library actually has 2 floors. It stars Tyrant.
Hello.
I don't believe it. West Country libraries have 3 floors of books. It's George Trevor.
Hi there.
And finally, residents in Portsmouth, well, they don't know what a book is, so their library is now social housing. It's Mr. Spencer.
Wonderful.
God, that was gold. So well done there.
Lovely stuff.
Coming up on today's podcast, we'll be running through all the latest Biohazard news. And we're going to have a quick discussion on RE7 as well, because there's obviously a new trailer to talk about as well. The main discussion of the podcast is Biohazard The Stage, which is a theatre production running in Japan, which is causing all sorts of stirs in the Canon universe. And as it's a Series 3 finale, we'll be finishing off with a very special quiz. Oh yes, hold on to your hats with that. So without further ado, we'll start with the news. So we'll start with Umbrella Corps, which went so well last time. We thought we'd start with it again. There's some more DLC, always good that it's free. This includes the 4 Survivors game mode and a new map featuring the marketplace area from Chapter 4 of Leon's campaign in Resident Evil 6. 4 Survivors features players battling to stay alive in a last man standing type scenario, with players gaining points for every second they survive and killing others. And you can also use a ink ribbon and locate a typewriter to save their progress, which is a nice nod to the old games. Also featured is more Wesker dialogue, the ability to play the maps in the dark, which I know, Sean, you want to have your say on that, and the inclusion of some classic music tracks and sound effects.
I just said the fact that it's using the music tracks, it includes, things like that typewriter mechanic you talked about. It scratches a little bit of a nostalgia itch, which works in the game's favour. I'm not giving it a pass. They're welcome improvements, and
it's free, so
yeah.
Do you think this is in response to fan criticism, do you think, or was it always planned?
I would imagine it was probably always planned, because I think the Spencer Mansion content was announced before the game was released, wasn't it? So
The mansion looks a lot better in the dark as well, and it plays the main hall music from the '96 original.
Oh, that's nice. Let's not try and dwell on Umbrella Corps, because the backlash has been immense. Mr. Spencer, do you have any views on Umbrella Corps?
Well, I played a bit of it with the Sean. Me and you played it for a bit.
Oh yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
And I thought, right, I'll give it a go. It's on PC, so I can play it.
You're a seasoned PC gamer, of course, so your expertise will be most appreciated here.
I mean, yeah, I do appreciate that the precise aiming that the mouse gives me when killing scrubs at video games. Yeah, it was alright, I suppose. It was... Played a bit of it. The problem I had with it was that at the end of a map, end of a round, the camera would zoom up and like a top-down bird's eye view of the map, but you'd never see like the outside of the map was just like black. You just saw the map itself. It looked really fucking bad. The locations seem alright, but I don't think it's worth the asking price. If it was a free-to-play game with some kind of microtransaction thing going on, then yeah, maybe I'd like it a bit more. That's about it.
I will say it does play a lot better on the PC than with a mouse and keyboard setup than it does on a controller.
That's interesting because, of course, it was never really designed for the PC.
No, but it lends itself more to the sort of Twitch reaction style gameplay, like, you know, a lot of sort of PC shooters, I think.
You just don't get that from a controller. You know, I've played, you know, on a PS3, PS2, whatever. But you just don't get that level of accuracy from a controller that you do with a mouse and keyboard.
Whilst we are on the topic of Umbrella Corps, we've had a question from seasoned Biohazard fan Vito. This was sent to Stars Tyrant by way of Twitter, asking whether we feel that Umbrella Corps will ever be retconned in the future.
I don't think there's anything to retcon, because all it is it's just testing battle data and BOWs in simulated conditions with new equipment and, you know, the training of soldiers. That sort of thing's gone on throughout the series right since the very beginning, so there's nothing major to retcon, and that's why I think the game's ultimately fine, because what it did present by way of the experiment, it didn't harm the canon in the first place.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at it. The question is, will it be ever made non-canon by Capcom?
It'll probably be one of these things they'll just quietly forget about in the future, but there's nothing prominent that's going to have serious consequences on the games going forward. Like, why on earth people would think Wesker would be resurrected in a multiplayer shooter game is beyond me.
You know, if they ever did like an Archives 3, I don't think it'll be included in it or anything.
Do you think it might have like the one line that Dead Aim received?
It might have a minor reference, because I think they'll keep the zombie jammer, won't they? And obviously it features in the Heavenly Island comic, which has ties back to Lost in Nightmares, so it's always going to be canon. It's just a minor consequence. It's never going to harm anything.
Capcom, to give them credit, they very rarely come out and say something's non-canon. I think they begrudgingly did it to Gaiden. They've never come out and said, like, Survivor 2 isn't canon, or they've...
I don't even think they ever clarified with Operation Raccoon City either. I know there's a few developer statements saying, yeah, it's more of a hypothetical story, but then you get the same developers in different interviews saying, yeah, it runs parallel to 2 and 3 and it adds to the story. I can't recall if they've ever really come out officially and said, yeah, it's not canon.
No.
Imagine the headache we'd have if, like, Archives 3 did come out and Operation Raccoon City's in there.
You know, no, I won't even, no.
No fucking joke about that, mate.
No. The next bit of news is Resident Evil 4 HD is available for PS4 and Xbox One. Has anyone purchased?
No, never will.
I did, only because I don't have a PS3 anymore. And it's fine. I think it's fine. It doesn't have any frame rate issues like Resident Evil 5 did, and it looks noticeably sharper than the last gen version as well, but obviously still nowhere near as good as the Fan HD project.
Support of the Ultimate HD.
Yeah, it is, yeah, because it's 60 frames a second version.
There are early reports of a few minor hiccups with the aiming system, but as you said, Bats, no major frame rate issues, which should make the game quite playable.
I demand 60 frames per second at least on every game I play.
We'll move on to a bit of Resident Evil 7 news. Capcom revealed a new demo of the game will be available at the Tokyo Game Show, which is happening on the 17th and 18th of September. We're going to have presentations from producers Masakaki Kawata and Tisoshoei Kanada, which is great. And we're going to have a 20th anniversary series retrospective with new reveals on Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. I'm sure everyone's excited about that. But more importantly, Resident Evil Vendetta.
I wonder if this will be where they announce this third mystery title, which they said they would do before the end of the year.
Oh yes, of course.
Resident Evil 8.
There's obviously speculation it's Revelations 3 or the Outbreak port. That's been rumoured for a couple of years now.
Be Outbreak, please be Outbreak.
It's interesting because on the official Facebook community page, they've been doing a few Outbreak-themed posts lately, which has got people asking a few sort of questions.
They're just cock teasing. They're just cocking the entire community.
I'm getting excited about Outbreak HD if it did come out, but then I'm kind of shattered in the fact that it certainly won't come off onto PlayStation 3.
I think it'd be amazing if they did it.
But then it would upset me, because if I then bought out a PlayStation 4 to play Outbreak, I'd then have to pay it, which upsets me even more. Okay, we'll move on to some RE7 news, which is kind of countering as our sub-discussion. We've had the US Entertainment Software Rating Board accidentally revealed the story of Resident Evil 7. So slap on the wrist to them. But you play as a character called Ethan, a man searching for his missing wife in a derelict mansion. Apparently weapons will include the classic pistol, shotgun, explosives, and also the return of the flamethrower, which is great. Have we seen a flamethrower since Resident Evil 1?
5. You got to use one against Ouroboros.
Oh yeah, I erased that from my mind. And chainsaws.
Get out.
Combat is accompanied by realistic gunfire, screams of pain, and exaggerated blood splattering effects, which is always nice because that's how it should be when you die in Resident Evil. That's subsequently been removed. Clearly, Capcom have been a bit angry by that, and it kind of ties in with the Lantern information and trailer thing that we've had recently. What's your views on this?
The trailer was like a 3-minute video, gameplay video, which showed you it is a VHS section where you're chased around this sort of underground.
With that woman going up to the camera.
Mia, is it? Is that her name? Mia?
Yeah, Mia. She's being chased by Marguerite Baker, who is the wife of Jack Baker, who chased you in the first demo.
Ah. So what was everyone's views on the Lantern then?
I liked it. It's almost exactly the same as Alien Isolation. Clearly these video tape segments are all flashbacks, and I presume they'll show how each of the sort of NPC characters get captured by this family. I would say the videotape sections will be quite linear, but I think they're designed to be because you always have to get caught at the end because it's the only way to end the videotape. So I believe those segments will play like Alien Isolation, where you don't have any guns, there'll only be one enemy stalking you, and the emphasis will purely be on stealth. But then the real-time game, which we haven't seen anything of yet, will feature sort of more prominent zombie-type creatures. So I'm excited for it. I think it's looking really good so far.
Quietly optimistic, but I think you're right. I think if those bits are linear, that will be fine. I do miss Resident Evil games which have the aura of being able to go where you want, even though no game ever has been. A bit like Resident Evil 0. In the train you couldn't do a lot; you had to go the right way. But when you got to the mansion in 0, the training facility, you've got this whole area, and you go, wow, I can do anything I want. And you kind of, the linear bit of the train was kind of offset of the non-linear bit of the mansion.
It almost sounds like what you want is a sense of exploration and adventure in your Resident Evil game.
Kind of. It's hard because, no Resident Evil game is open world exploration, is it? You can't go everywhere in the mansion, but you can explore everywhere, and you can find out where you can't go, and then you make a mental note, well, can't go through that door.
Well, I agree. I think that's a good thing. Like, I don't want to see like an open world kind of deal. I'd like to have like a nice big sort of mansion that you can explore and find out what happened, like a murder mystery. That's what I want to see.
In your own time, at your own pace. And I think that's the biggest problem of 5 and 6, is that you don't get enough time to do anything. Because
it's a roller coaster, isn't it? It's just sent you, like a roller coaster ride. It's over too quick.
I think the final game will play a bit like Resident Evil 3, in the sense that you sort of have a certain amount of freedom to choose your own routes through Raccoon City, but ultimately, it's still from point A to point B. And I think Resident Evil 7 will be the same because it takes place on this big plantation farm and like the surrounding swamps and forest land. So I think there'll be a fairly decent degree of freedom, but obviously there'll be copious amounts of locked doors that'll keep you on the right path, so to speak.
I think what was interesting, even if the VHS sections are going to be linear, if they do kind of what they did in the demo, where you can use them to change things in the present, I think that'll be a nice spin. So if there's like Mia, for example, you can prepare things and set things up for when you actually explore there in the present. It's a nice continuation of like the partner zapping thing that earlier games have done.
Yeah, and I think they've confirmed there's going to be numerous videotapes, and they have sort of replaced the files, but there is also going to be traditional text files as well.
I know we've got that basic story that I've just read out, but we don't know a lot about how this connects to the wider world.
To be honest, I'm preparing myself for it to being very, very self-contained, even more so than Resident Evil 4 was. I don't think it's going to add a lot to the overall story, but to be honest, I'm past the point of caring now, because I think the story's, it's running out of steam. There's nowhere really for it to go, so I'm quite pleased they're branching off into a completely new direction. And I just think the only sort of link to the main series is this family are obviously, I think they're the survivors of some long past Umbrella experiment, and for some reason they've taken to capturing people. And I think in the Lantern demo, this Marguerite Baker makes mention of this Mia rejecting some kind of gift that was given to her.
George, what's your views on how Resident Evil 7's looking so far?
That I need to be paying more attention, because the news was only broken to me recently by Batman that there's this time travel issue with the gameplay and and the significance of these VHS tapes. Nothing about the second trailer, I suppose, has given me any further reservations. It felt quite staged still, though, for me. Not even going to say linear, because it almost didn't feel like gameplay. A lot of it just felt staged. But I love the whole atmosphere and feel of it. But again, it didn't really seem. It seemed to kind of pose more questions than answers again, in terms of is it going to be that staged? How significant is that form of gameplay? I don't know if I've missed something, but I don't feel like I've actually seen real hands-on gameplay and how this game, I think by this stage, with the game that will be coming out in January, would have a much better idea of actually how it was going to play.
Well, we've got Tokyo Game Show, which is coming up, and that's going to have a playable demo.
I put a post up on Biohazard last night that I'm a bit saddened by some people's reaction to the sort of the way the marketing's been done. You know, and I think it's such a shame that people are craving to see so much, whereas I think the mystery of the fact that we've not seen anything is really working for me for the game's strengths. I said a couple of weeks ago that I would really like to see how the combat and puzzles work, but I've actually changed my mind since then, and that I think I'd kind of like to go in completely blind in January and have no idea how the game's going to play or work.
Isn't that indicative, though, of today's must-have?
Well, yeah, but I liken
culture.
it to the people who love these modern movie trailers. Like, you know, you got your new Marvel film that comes out, and literally the entire 3-act structure is played out within the 2.5-minute trailer.
Yeah.
And then leaves you nothing left for the film.
You know, as soon as the film's over, then you've got the trailer for the next film, or the little Easter egg at the end, and everyone's, oh my god, I'm so excited about that film, and it's just, what's next, what's next, what's next, and it's like, oh.
I think it's quite refreshing and quite brave of modern Capcom, of all people, to sort of hold all the cards very close to the chest for a change. You know, like, you go back to, as much as I like the Play God trailer from Resident Evil 5, it does show a lot of the game.
Yes, you could deduce quite a lot from it.
So, you know, we'll see what happens. I'm almost hoping they don't show us any combat now, because they released some of the technology that's in it, and they show quite a few screens there and some of the characters. I don't know whether you've seen that, Nick, from the technical presentation they did.
Yeah.
This picture's being posted on PU.
They were showing off the new RE engine they've developed.
Yeah, and they look really cool, and some of the pictures of like corridors, and I think there's a gate in a garden and that, and it just looks really. I've linked it in the chat here. It looks really quite effective, I think.
I think there was another bit of news. I mean, it goes without saying, but that concept, I think last year that came out with Claire and Chris, or some characters standing by what looked like an oil rig, that was a scrapped version of RE7.
And we can look forward to seeing a demo of it in about 11 years then.
I'll obsess over it. Yeah, we'll
6.5.
But another thing this presentation Capcom did with the new engine, they've hinted at item boxes coming back as well.
Oh, brilliant.
God, it's almost like I can't let myself start to believe that it's quite good.
Yeah.
It's interesting the fact that have you guys talked about the tweaking of the VR, because they've said the feedback to the VR has been quite negative in terms of motion sickness and things like that, so they've said they're going to have to heavily rework it in places.
Well, that's really heartening to hear, particularly as someone who suffered with Resident Evil 5, just even on a more general scale, that they're just listening to that type of feedback and they're acting on it, so that's definitely a good thing.
I'm not sure, the returning of item boxes, does that automatically suggest it's a...
It might be used in the Outbreak kind of context where you just use it to get an item high up.
It's not confirmed, but it would make sense, because it's not like Resident Evil 5 where you're just sort of going on and on to new locations all the time. You're going to be in the same location for the duration of the game, I think.
Yeah, and the demo shows how limited the inventory can be, because even like the bolt croppers take up 2 spaces, don't they?
Yeah.
See, when you said item boxes, I was with Sean. I didn't want to get too overexcited.
Isn't it stupid that we get like this?
I don't know if I'm taking it too seriously, but that's almost the whole structure of the gameplay. Because as you say, if there are item boxes, then it's not just mere item management. It's not just a presentation of an inventory. Like Batman says, you don't have that whole just episodic going forward. If there's an item box, then presumably wherever you dump an item, you're going back there, bringing you back. There's that exploration, but within kind of like a circle where you're always staying around the same general area, still exploring. But then there's the backtracking, which is what I love, with the puzzles, finding one item on one section of the map, but not being able to use it, or its significance not being relevant to somewhere completely different. The other thing that with the item boxes, you've also got that other structure of the gameplay where you had the real survival mode, depending on whether they're connected or not. So there's that addition as well.
I just hope the puzzles aren't going to be a simple case of finding a key item and just taking it to a door. But we'll see.
We shall, and we'll inevitably have further for the next couple of podcasts. Undoubtedly, we'll be bracing ourselves for Resident Evil 7, a game that I still think, it took us all a bit out of left field, should we say. No one was really expecting it to be announced, and then with the release date just round the corner.
It's amazing though, isn't it? I think I posted it somewhere else. I mean, if you take the plot description of Resident Evil 6, as in President of the United States is assassinated in a global bioterrorist conspiracy because he wanted to reveal the truth about Raccoon City, and then the sequel is man searches for wife in missing house. You know what I mean, though? And yeah, but this game has got everyone talking, and I just find that fascinating.
But I think they pushed themselves into a corner, Capcom, because where else can you go? Well, once you start bringing in global bioterrorism and going to the four corners of the world with the gameplay sections, there wasn't anywhere else they could go, was there?
No.
It got too bombastic, I think. It got bigger and bigger until they couldn't really go anymore unless they went into space and did some big intergalactic battle or something like that,
I mean, I've only played the last sort of 3 or 4 games purely for the story, but this one is actually the first game in probably about 6 or 7 years where I'm actually looking forward to the atmosphere and how it plays and how it makes me feel, as opposed to whether or not it's going to break canon or cause any continuity errors. I'm actually looking forward to it as a game. I've not said that about Resident Evil for years.
I want that feeling of going, I don't want to play this game, but I do. I don't want to go through the next door. I don't, I've just got the key to go outside to the plantation, I've got the key to go into the mechanical barn where all the farmyard equipment is. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play it really. I don't, because that's how it used to be. You didn't want to carry on. You didn't want to go in the sewers. You didn't want to go into the park or the hospital, but you wanted to. It was that kind of conflicting feeling.
Yeah.
And whereas I feel with other games, it was more of I genuinely don't want to play
It's
anymore.
almost like in that game, curiosity can kill you in the game.
Yes.
Because you don't want to. It's like, I don't really want to do this, but I need to know what's behind that door.
But I've only got 10 bullets left. What am I going to do? What if there's a big spider? Yeah. Shit. I think Batman's right. It's the if they can nail that atmosphere, we are on to a winner. Okay, well, that concludes our kind of very brief sub-discussion on RE7 and then the latest news. We now move on to the main discussion and topic of this podcast. We're talking about Biohazard, the stage. So anyone not in the know, Biohazard of the Stage is a theatre production running in Japan, which adds a whole new chapter in the Biohazard Canon universe. It's currently available on YouTube, which is well worth the watch. It's just over 2 hours long. If you Google it or YouTube it, it's normally one of the top options that has English subtitles. Please bear with them. They're a bit hit and miss. They're on par with Dead Aim with its subtitling, but if you stick into it and follow it, it is without doubt the best thing that has happened to Resident Evil since... well, obviously since Revelations 2, because I love Revelations 2, but in terms of storyline, this is better than the Revelations 2 storyline. It is a fantastic production. I absolutely love it. I think it is a sensational classic Biohazard, and for the love of God, why wasn't this Resident Evil 6?
Agree with all of that.
Wow.
Go on then, Nick. What makes it work for you where all the other titles haven't?
Well, firstly, it goes without saying that the main character in this is clearly Tyler Hamilton from Confidential Report. bar a few letters in his surname, it is the same chap.
Are you
My
being
God.
serious?
We actually went there.
I'm being deadly serious.
Didn't Tyler Hamilton get recruited by the government at the end of Confidential Report? Or am I just making that up?
Let's look at the facts, shall we? Confidential report at no point says Raccoon City, I might add. It is possible that the incident that is referred to in the Biohazard, the stage, in the flashback, which happens in Rochester in Minnesota, is in fact what happens in Confidential Report.
Did you just hear that thud from Mexico? I actually think Vito's just shot himself.
I think this is a brilliant storyline, well acted, and we have the one of the greatest characters that's been invented for the Biohazard series, joining the list of people we hardly knew of Posh Brown, who is, in my opinion, an absolute legend. He joins up with Mike, the helicopter pilot from Resident Evil 4, and the tragic death of the comms officer in Revelations. He is certainly an invincible character brought down in the prime of his life. And with a name like Posh and a surname like Brown, what a hero. What a hero. He saves the world, in my opinion. But no, it is a fabulous storyline. I would recommend it to anyone. And it doesn't help that the actress for Sophie is rather attractive.
She's Japanese, though.
Yeah, hence the attractive.
Well, she's real for a start, not just a bunch of pixels.
Sean, what did you
What's that
think?
supposed to be?
Well, I've always had quite a love for theatre anyway, so I wasn't put off by the idea of this initially. And I just think it's not without its flaws, which we'll get to. There is a couple of things in there which you can nitpick, but it's a fabulous addition to the canon. I think the characters in it are really quite good. The storyline is it weaves on a bit, and it likes to start piling the twists on in the second act. But ultimately they don't detract from the good characters. And we're going to go into detail in it very shortly, so I'll just finish off this little opener by just saying, after all these years, welcome back, Becky. You are wonderful.
Yes. Special mention to Rebecca Chambers as well. We'll definitely go into that. Batman, what was your view?
Yeah, I loved it. I was very impressed. I like stage plays as well, so I was very interested to see how it would translate across. But I thought it was very good. I enjoyed the characters. I thought it was well acted. The production design and the costumes were really good. Storyline was good. They used a lot of unused concepts. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but the whole sort of creating a virus from the fossilized human remains was actually the original progenitor virus story before Resident Evil 5. And Mary Gray reminded me very much of Alexia Ashford, child genius who believed she was something better than human. And I think Ryan Howard, as a sort of tragic anti-hero, is a really, really good character. And like you said, the return of Becky Chambers, you'd think because she's been away for so long she wouldn't be recognisable at all, but it did feel like the same character from Zero and Resident Evil. So overall, I think it was very, very good.
George?
I'm going to have to watch it again to get that. to get that much out of it. I think some of it's not really criticisms. I think my failure to connect with it might be because, Batman says he likes stage plays, and it's not that I don't like them, but that was one of my issues. I kind of failed to connect with a lot of the characters and the atmosphere. For example, Rebecca, so delighted that she came back. Not so much her character, but I felt a lot of the younger characters just kind of felt like J-pop, models. They didn't seem to necessarily have been picked for their acting ability, but it was a very hard thing to pull off, and for it to come across as not cheesy. And that's one thing it didn't do. I was quite curious as to what a particular, like a large-scale zombie attack would be like. And I don't think it's until at least an hour in that you get one. And I thought it was very, very well done. And it was kind of not really a dance routine, was it? But it was done with sort of dance movement, wasn't it? And it was all sort of... But no, I might not be doing it justice, but it wasn't cheesy at all, and I thought they did that very well. And there were little things I loved, just little things when Rebecca's character went up to a bookcase. It was these books all on biology or something, and it almost felt identical, like they'd literally taken that out of one of the environmental, descriptions. But on the whole, I found it went on a little bit.
The point about the dancing bit was interesting. When I watched that, I assumed it was a preview to the voice of Gaia, whatever was coming out at some point, but there we go. Mr. Spence, you haven't seen it, have you?
I have not, so I'm coming at this from a completely blank slate here.
That's really useful, because what I want to do is try, for people who haven't seen it, try, with the help of me and Bats and everyone who's watched it, try and pin down the storyline. It is quite difficult to follow. We have flashbacks. We have flashbacks to the mansion incident. We have flashbacks to a different period of time, a different biohazard outbreak. So, in terms of chronological order, the main researcher is Professor Liam Howard.
Ryan Howard. The subtitles call him Liam, but his name's Ryan Howard.
Ah, well, there we go. See, this is the problem with the subtitles. There you go. Ryan Howard. He's a professor. His wife died after their son Tyler was born. Now, he was researching into... he tried to prevent... Was it cancer or something like that?
No, he specialised in fossil regeneration, didn't he?
But was
the
it
resurrection of dead cells. That's what he specialised in, and when Tyler was killed in action, he focused his research on trying to resurrect him.
The funding stopped on that particular research, and he was then approached by the Umbrella Corporation to join them, who would give him unlimited funding, should I say, into his research. In 2003, of course, Umbrella dies, and Ryan takes a copy of the T-virus and flees to Australia. Prior to that, Tyler joins Rochester Police Department.
Yeah, because when Ryan joins Umbrella, they never let him go home, do they? So,
so he never comes
he
back,
becomes a cop to search for his dad.
Yes, that's right, yeah. And that's in the Rochester Police Department. There is a biohazard outbreak in Rochester, but we don't know a lot of information about that.
Just that Rebecca's present there.
Yes.
As a B.S.A.A. advisor at the time.
And she saves the life of Tyler, who is a police officer on call. But is he fake his death? He's reported as killed.
Basically, he finds like a data pad that proves the incident was caused by like ex-Umbrella researchers, which he doesn't want to believe includes his dad. And because he found that evidence, he gets recruited as a US government agent and joins the same agency under Adam Benford that Leon works for.
Is that DSO then?
It's before the DSO was formed. It's just sort of got a generic sort of secret military agency title.
So it's the agency that Leon's with in 4 with Krauser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. So then Ryan takes the T-virus, flees to Australia, and goes to Philosophy University. So the main story takes place in this university. We don't know the full extent of the outbreak in Rochester. We don't know how it was brought under control. We don't know what caused it, really. I assume it's just another bright spot on the degeneration map. So you then kind of fast forward to 2005?
No, the Rochester outbreak happens in 2005. The outbreak at the university happens in 2010.
2010, thank you. I watched it in 2 bits and I forgot the first bit. The whole story kind of starts, I suppose, with the fact that there has been a lot of students going missing on campus.
If I could just go back one bit, before Ryan Howard left Umbrella, he took Mary Gray with him because she was the daughter of an Umbrella researcher who was dying of a terminal blood disease. So, as like a last desperate measure, they injected her with the T-virus.
Yes.
And she became the only human to bond with it completely perfectly. Like, better than Wesker, better than anyone else. And she has an IQ of 200...
Magic powers out of it, or just like a normal human?
She's got an IQ of 230, but it's not clear if she had that originally or whether it was the virus that did that.
Because wouldn't it be great? Like, I want to see something where when someone gets given the T-virus, it doesn't change into a superhuman with, like, whatever kind of deal, but it just cures them of, like, say, cancer or this blood disease. It just cures them, but they're still a normal human as they were before.
Well, I noted, I put here in my notes, similar to Manuela in the kind of T. Veronica use.
Yeah.
The reveal about Mary Gray, that's the big kind of reveal at the end, so spoilers. She is probably the main female character in the play. She is infected with the T-virus, she bonds with it, as you say, perfectly, and her intelligence is very high. She thinks quite less of other people, should we say.
That's a side effect of T-virus, isn't it?
Mm.
Well, it reminded me very much of Alexia, because Alexia felt she was better than the rest of humanity, and she was going to use the T. Veronica virus to infect everyone, wasn't she? And Mary Gray believes humanity is selfish and stupid, and she wants to destroy them all by resetting the world. So it goes back to this sort of recycled plot of replacing humanity with a new breed of superhumans that they seem to be using in every nude game that comes out these days.
Yeah, the resetting the world is a very common theme throughout.
Mm.
So, as I understood it, Mary Gray talks with Professor Howard quite a lot in trying to manipulate him and the rector, his name is Rector Ezra, the chief.
Yeah, he's the dean of the university.
Yes.
Professor Howard went to him because Ezra believes that he could use the T-virus to artificially increase the intelligence of humans, because he believes that a human who has the desire to sort of learn and educate themselves to make themselves better will eventually replace a human's need for war and conflict. But Mary Gray over time manipulates Ryan by saying, look, you've lost your son, you're never going to get him back. And that sort of eventually makes him change the focus of his research back to bioweapons.
And we do have a new virus in this game, T. Howard virus.
Is it actually called that?
No.
No, it's not.
It's just a new strain of T virus, isn't it, made with DNA from the Irish giant fossil.
Yes, Britain finally has a good connection to Resident Evil.
And that is actually the full Irish giant it's meant to be, isn't it? It's been excavated, hasn't it?
Yes. Problem is, you watch it, you don't know all this until you get to the end, so you're going to have to kind of think about how it all goes back afterwards. But so students go missing on campus, and we know Rebecca has previously been sniffing around the university.
I think she went undercover there because she learnt that Tyler's father was working there, and she knew because of when she met him during the flashback that he was a former Umbrella researcher. So that's the reason why I think she went undercover at the school to investigate him.
Yes, she goes there as a teacher, and she doesn't get on with Mary Gray, if I remember correctly. They have issues. But there's loads of other students involved, and it gradually turns into a full-scale biohazard outbreak with plenty of zombies, and then he's basically been stuck inside the university until the B.S.A.A. turned up in the form of Chris and Piers. And I love Piers. I think he was so good.
He was really great in this.
He was exactly how he was.
The actor who played Chris was really good in this, actually.
He was.
And we get introduced to a new B.S.A.A. member from the Oceania branch.
Yes,
Sophie Home, and it's implied that the rest of her team are sort of securing the university from the outside. And there's also a police detective character called Barrington, who Ezra hired to discreetly investigate the missing students.
Yes.
Because he doesn't want any damage done to the reputation of the university, which is an obvious reference to the same plot point from Mahawa Desire. And it's revealed that Ezra is bribing Barrington because he's just your sort of typical Flash detective who is corrupt and has a love of money.
Yes.
And I thought it was a nice touch that he was suspicious of Rebecca from the outset because he noticed she was always going to the fossil museum where Professor Howard worked, and this prompted him to do a background check on her, and he discovered she was a STARS member. I thought that was really good.
That was a bit lost on me why he initially that suspicion that comes up when he sort of mentions, I've noticed you sneaking away to look at the fossils. I mean, where it just seemed dumbfounded. I didn't quite get that, why he was so suspicious of her.
I think it's just because she's turned up as a new teacher at the school and she teaches in the science department, but she was going to the fossil museum, which is at the other end of the university.
Yeah.
And when he found out she was a former STARS member, that's when he got suspicious of who she really was.
So it then picks up with basically them all exploring different parts, uncovering the truth about who's doing what. They split up.
It was weird. I was just sort of getting into it, and then the zombies just seemed to turn up out of nowhere. And I still don't think it's fully clear
how they get in.
How they got out. Was it Professor Howard or was it Mary Gray?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of things that have been lost in the subtitles, really, isn't it?
Because that was the thing that I was thinking. Some of the subtitles, there seemed to be a lot of... Sometimes it seemed like one of those sketches where you'd see a lot of speech being said and then the subtitle would be like just a few words. So I was wondering how much, even the subtleties of some of the scenes and the dialogue between characters, whether that that was being lost in the subtitles were quite... I mean, it's good that they were relatively basic because, you're taking your eyes... And that was the other thing. You're taking... A lot of the time, you want to look around at the way that the actors are interjecting with each other, particularly their facial expressions and anything that can be intimated by that. And that's why I actually thought initially maybe I'd missed something else that had gone on as to why suspicions were arose in Rebecca so soon.
I think Barrington, he didn't need to be in it at all. You could easily remove him from the storyline. He didn't add a lot.
I didn't mind him though too much.
No.
I thought he did his villain role quite well.
So the story progresses with them splitting up, encountering various human survivors, lots of them being eaten and turning into zombies. Clever use of a limited budget and turning them into zombies. And then we meet the best character in the world, Posh Brown.
God.
Who is the security guard who's not doing very well and hiding in cupboards. But he redeems himself. He does.
He's given a backstory. He's given more characterization than fucking Jake Mueller is.
Yes, he's wonderfully portrayed. But ultimately, he gets killed as well. And we are told the backstory that we've just kind of alluded to about Ezra wanting to uphold the dignity of the university as a university that he founded himself. He has an adopted son called Matthew, who is also the university secretary. He hangs himself. This is where I did get a bit confused.
Well, he's also tested on, isn't he? And he gains an IQ, doesn't he?
I don't know, because I was saying this to Nick before we started recording. Matthew's character was the only thing that was confusing me, really. I didn't really understand what his motivations were. On subsequent rewatches of this, I noticed things you don't notice the first time round. Like, if the focus is on a pair of characters having a conversation, you often see one of the other characters in the background talking with someone else. Like, there's a few times where you see Mary and Matthew together talking. So I think she was manipulating him somehow. And he tried to convince Ezra to use the T-virus to create perfect humans as bioweapons. And it was Ezra's rejection of this idea that led to him hanging himself.
Yeah, because he's pretty down after that, isn't he? And
Yeah.
he drops to his knees.
That's how I saw it, and then obviously Barrington tries to frame him as the murderer, doesn't he?
Yeah, he gives Barrington a scapegoat opportunity for the whole incident, which he uses as a bartering chip with Chris, isn't it?
Yeah, to blame Matthew or causing the outbreak.
Yeah. So he basically says to Chris, if you just wipe out all the zombies, I'll let Rebecca go. Oh no, because Rebecca's freed herself at this point, hasn't she?
Yeah, but that was his original plan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When he first took her hostage.
Yeah, but essentially it's a battle of ideals as to what the T-virus should be used for. Yeah, you've got the kind of goodies with Ezra wanting to use it to infect people to increase their intelligence.
I really quite like that element because it sort of almost reminded me of maybe a better narrative for Resident Evil Zero, where you could have had competing, going back to the creation of Umbrella and perhaps maybe, these three sort of competing scientists, what they wanted to do with the virus, rather than just all speeding ahead, being maybe the first to create a BOW, perhaps, some wanting to use it for good. So I thought that was a very good plot point.
I think Ezra was completely ignorant to what the T-virus actually does.
Yes.
I mean, I got the impression that Ryan Howard's just turned up on his doorstep and said, look, I've got this virus, this is what it does, and he shows Mary Gray, this young student with an IQ of 230, and I think Ezra's goal was just to see a race of perfect humans who just had such a hunger to further their understanding that it would just eradicate all war and conflict.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's quite a tragic character. What's interesting about a lot of the character motivations in this, with the sort of villain side of it, is that they're not just, like, power-struggling crazy people. Their pasts are actually rooted in a lot of sadness. Like, Ryan's past is driven basically through him thinking he's lost his son, and Ezra because he lost his parents when he was young. And they've actually tried to make not justifiable motivations, but at least so you can at least understand a little bit where they're coming from.
I think you're right. I think that's a perfect thing. If he's been shown Mary Gray, someone, look, have the T-virus, look how intelligent they are. That's what you want. You want clever people going forward.
Well, I think it's because he was never given the opportunity to be anything other, was he? Yeah. That's why he chose to be the runner of the university, so he had a place to give people who didn't have opportunities.
But the real big bad was Professor Ryan. He was mad, I think.
Only through grief.
Through grief of his son. He refused to acknowledge that his son was alive, even though he was presented with him.
I think by the point we meet him at the stage, he's long past,
yes.
Isn't he?
So much so that he caused the biohazard outbreak.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how, but he did.
It was through Mary Gray's manipulation he started experimenting on the students, because she struggled to build up relationships with people because she knew she was better than everyone else. And I think at the end, doesn't he says, well, I've done it all because I wanted to punish the world for taking away my son. And there's some nice little subtle things in there, like he absolutely detests Barrington because Barrington's a detective, and he hates the police because the police killed his son.
Yes, yeah. There's two scenes, isn't there, where he basically begs, I'm your son, and it's completely ignored, isn't it? So he's the big bad, and he releases the virus. We get, in terms of BOWs, we get zombies, but then we are then presented with a tyrant.
Yes.
Considering the limitations on actually being able to have a live tyrant, I thought it was quite good. Admittedly, a bit too kung fu.
That's more to do with the theatrics of the play, though, isn't it, than anything?
I thought it looked better than the ones in Operation Raccoon City.
I was instantly reminded of the Damnation Tyrant. It's a Mr. X, but with a kind of black limiter coat on.
It's almost like he studied the movements of them in Damnation, though, because like when he starts like running, he does that sort of initial slow jog to a sprint that they do in Damnation, and it almost looked the same. I was quite impressed by that.
Yeah, I think, and that's maybe one simple way why they can get across the heaviness and the weight of the body, perhaps without having the size, because they're limited by that. I think that's quite a good use of, I suppose it's mime or whatever it is. I like that movement, it's good.
I think it's worth saying on the whole, the choreography and like the fight sequence is very, very good, actually.
Yeah.
They were, to be able to time it quite well with obviously all the music and all the sound effects of being punched and things. It was impressive. It was very impressive. So he released the Tyrant. Tyrant doesn't last long.
That's probably my only nitpicks, which again we'll get into later, but when they dispatched it quite, not easily, but I remember I clicked ahead when I first sort of watched it, just to, when it first came on the internet, and I saw this big monster at the end, and I was for sure thinking it was going to turn up at the end, but in the end it just disappears. We're sort of given this promise that it's a new Tyrant with the new virus strain in it, and they managed to kill it before its limiter coat goes off, and I just think, it's a bit of a shame that.
Yeah, I think that's just the obvious limitations of the stage play, isn't it?
Yeah.
So after dispatching the Tyrant, Ryan Howard is killed. There's a false end then, isn't it? You think everything's fine, and then Mary Gray turns up and basically reveals the storyline which we've just talked about, how she's basically been in charge. She's the perfectly bonded T-virus creation. Piers and Chris try to say, don't worry, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, you can live with it. Bit similar to the character from the second Resident Evil movie, by the way, bonded with the T-virus. Was it Angela Ashford?
Fucking hell, we went there, didn't we?
Well, I did think that. So she then gets a bit peeved off. She's very good, very handy in a fist fight as well. I was almost expecting her to suddenly have Wesker powers.
Well,
but
I was wondering if that was kind of implied, because...
Do you think it was?
I think it was, because the character's sort of, they're pointing the guns at places where she's not there, as if it's implied she's sort of zipping around at super speed.
There was something very up with that, because I was wondering where the hell are these... Well, not the superpowers, just the fact that she was kicking ass, and everyone, sort of their actions just seemed to be so ineffectual against hers. And again, I thought, I must have missed something in the subtitles. She must have had, these Wesker powers.
Well, we'll come to her because she's an enigma in itself. But anyway, they have a fisty fight, and then they think they've stopped her, and she seems to reflect on her sins, should she speak. But then she goes, the world should reset, and she then mutates. She forces herself to mutate, a bit Sergei Vladimir-esque, into a big... It's hard to tell what it is.
It reminded me of the Nix from Outbreak File 2. Because if you look closely, you can see a human form still stuck in the middle of it.
Yes, yeah.
Similar to how the Nix absorbs the Tyrant, and you can see it sort of stuck in the middle of its chest.
Yes, and that's an interesting, I thought it was a bit similar to a big Lisa Trevor. It definitely had tentacles. I say it's difficult to make out because they do it, if you watch it, they do it behind a kind of screen with a kind of image projected on it. It probably looks quite clear if you're sitting watching it live, but it's quite hard to tell what it is. But she's ultimately defeated and killed, and then it all kind of ends nice and happily. Everyone walks off before a nice little teaser at the end with Ezra picking up the briefcase?
Briefcase with the new virus in it, yeah.
Yes, with the virus. And then it ends.
Ready for Resident Evil Vendetta, is it?
It does say to be continued, so we shall see. So that's a very, I say brief, that was a bit longer than anticipated, breakdown of the storyline. So, if we take the characters in turn, because I think people will be interested in how they're portrayed, we'll start with Rebecca, because that's the headline figure. Rebecca Chambers is back. And I think we've already touched on it earlier, saying how well portrayed she was, in that you instantly knew it was Rebecca Chambers. The actress played her very well, very vulnerable. And it just makes me hate RE0 that little bit more.
Why?
Because this is a perfect portrayal of Rebecca as seen in the Mansion incident.
Remake or original?
Remake. Very vulnerable, very slightly scared what the hell's going on. And you get a wonderful flashback with Chris.
Flashbacks. It's just worth saying how well the flashbacks are integrated in terms of the play as well, because they kind of play some projected video, don't they, to make the character appear twice while they're sort of narrating a flashback. It's so cleverly done, and then they'll just walk back onto the present day set.
In their cool costumes, I might add.
Yeah, the Mansion flashback was... It sounds stupid, but any long-time fans will know what I'm saying. You just get goosebumps at things like that. It's just, wow.
It was a wonderful kind of portrayal of Rebecca, and Chris, for that matter. I'll give the actor who played Chris credit there as well. And throughout the whole thing, you felt with Rebecca that this was a perfect continuation of her storyline. In the same way, I think that Claire's story carried on well by joining TerraSave. That's the exact type of thing you think she would have done. I think Rebecca was perfect in the way it was portrayed. And it, as I said, just makes me hate Zero more, because the horrors she went through in Zero bear no relation to what we saw in Remake. But yes, if you like Rebecca in Remake, then I think you'll like how she was portrayed in this.
I thought the costumes overall, and this helped with, particularly for me when I did fail to connect with a lot of the characters, because I don't know, for me they maybe it was a bit reading the subtitles, so you couldn't see any subtleties in their facial expression. Again, a lot of them did look quite young and good looking rather than sort of actual acting ability. But the costumes I thought were really, really good. Rebecca's, those are the sorts of things that can come across as looking a little bit, amateur dramatics, like, it's all a bit secondhand. But I don't know, I remember Gene Venables mentioning the costumes and things. These were sort of high production values for the rides. What are they called? The real Biohazard. The real. Yeah, so I'm not sure if they have the same production company that made them, but yeah, I think their costumes were really good.
Well, the Tyrant, it actually looked like a BOW. I thought it was, although a bit short, they've obviously got the tallest person they could find, but it was convincing as a BOW. Batman, what would you say about Rebecca?
Like I said before, considering she's been missing for God knows how many years, watching her in this for 10 minutes, it felt like she'd never been gone in many respects.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, yeah.
I'd like to have known a bit more of what she'd been up to since Raccoon City. Obviously, she joined the B.S.A.A. as a consultant, but I would have liked to know what else she did on top of that. But filling in as sort of like a university teacher teaching science or medicine, that seems like a natural fit for someone like her. And I found it interesting how initially she was reluctant to shoot the zombies because they were her former students. And I suppose that just shows how rusty she is, because she doesn't normally do field missions. But yeah, very impressed.
Sean?
Yeah, I'll echo it. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Rebecca because I always used to play the Chris campaign in the original. And one of my biggest sort of criticisms of Capcom over the years is the lack of using characters like Barry and Rebecca, and like in the space of 2 years, which is like 19th and 20th year of the series respectively, we finally sort of starting to get answers. I just look forward to like seeing more of the backstory fleshed out. Like John said, I'd like to see, if Vendetta is what we're thinking will be a sequel to this, then I'm hoping that we'll actually get to see a lot more of what she's been up to. But she's certainly, she's wonderful in this. The only thing you could say is that she's made a little bit redundant in the second half.
Yes, for people that don't know, she's held hostage for a small period of time. And yeah, you could say that Chris and Piers kind of come in and steal a bit of her thunder. I would echo that, Rebecca fans, it's the moment we've been waiting for. And of course, Rebecca is due back in. It is Vendetta, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I liked as well is the fact that it's implied she is still very much part of the story, because if anyone's expecting a big moment between Chris and Rebecca, you're not going to get that in this. It's heavily implied that she's been an advisor to the B.S.A.A. for quite some time, so you would naturally assume that they see each other quite often.
Yeah.
But, anyone who's not seen it yet, the flashback to the mansion is a real treat.
Yes.
It really is.
And it works well. Also, her flashback to Rochester. Obviously, we have no idea what happened in Rochester, but I think it really emphasises her kind of caring nurse-type background, the medic-type background that she's had. And as you said, it makes sense that she's been an advisor for a long time, not wanting to do missions, just to help where she can, because she's had face-to-face experience of BOW combat. It would make sense that an organisation like that would want to keep her on board. I do wonder in the future whether we'll have other media outlets about what she's done in the meantime. Who knows? Vendetta is obviously something to look forward to, and hopefully there'll be some references to it. I assume where it says to be continued that it does mean Vendetta, but who knows? So we'll put Chris and Piers together, just because these are our two main B.S.A.A. agents that we all know already. I love Piers. I think he's such a cool character, and it's a travesty that he was killed off in 6 when there was no need. And it should have been Chris, but neither here nor there. And it's things like this that really make that decision by Capcom to kill him off far worse, because they're actually giving him backstory.
But that's what makes it better, in my opinion, because you actually care when he does die.
But I didn't want him to die, though.
Yeah, but that's what makes it good. If you don't want him to die and he dies, that shows it's worked, essentially. Whereas the problem we have most of the time now is you don't care when the characters die.
Yeah, it's true. It's almost like they're sort of almost regretting the decision that they killed him, so they're actually saying, well, let's give you a little bit more, make you care a bit more.
Well, it started with Revelations 2, that one line from Claire at the end. That was like, oh, that's harsh. I can't remember what she says, just like...
And the thing is, he gets the girl in this as well.
And he gets the girl, yeah. He does, yeah. He gets the number of Sophie. Sophie Home, is that her surname?
Sophie Home.
Yeah. Sophie Home.
But yeah, Piers is cool. He uses the rifle already. They get all the character facts right. He's B.S.A.A. sharpshooter, isn't he? And
he's got his little cravat.
Yeah.
And it was good because it showed him being still enthusiastic. won't say rough and ready, but kind of like, on edge and a bit like, yeah, come on, let's do it. It's very similar to his RE6 character, which is a good thing, because I think he's probably one of the best things out of RE6 myself. Okay, what did you want to say about Chris?
Just that outside of the Edonia sequence, this is the first time, the only time you get to see Chris after the events of 5. And he seems a lot more sort of at peace with himself. He actually deals with a few things in the stage through actually like talking it down. For someone who is a man of action and punches boulders,
yeah,
to actually actually see him reason with Tyler and talk him down and get him on side is a bit of a far cry from the sort of almost desperate person he's become in 5. He's a little bit reckless, and like when he sees Wesker in Lost in Nightmares, he just like loses it. He's so driven by what he wants to do. And this is, Chris actually, he doesn't seem as focused in, just punching things very hard as much in this one. He seems to want to try and sort of resolve the situation as best he can. And I just thought it was a nice. He's still a man of action, don't get me wrong, he's still a leader and he's still focused on the family of his unit, but it felt a natural progression after 5, which makes his fall in 6 now a bit more tragic. What I like about the series Resident Evil, and a lot of people will know this, is that you get a game like 4, and it's things after 4 that enhance 4.
Yep.
And I think that's what the stage has done with 6 a little bit. It's actually improved aspects of the characterization in 6. And, I think that's just a very masterful thing, which, given the amount of input, the amount of writers, the amount of different people that contribute to the creation of this series, the fact that it's quite a solid timeline in terms of characters and things like that is a miracle, really.
Yes. It does seem to have a habit of this, doesn't it? With the major numbered games needing to be improved later on through other mediums, and needing other games or whatnot to save it from being completely irrelevant. But there we go. Would it have not been a good idea? I mean, there was lots of dinosaurs in this, and fossils. I wasn't clear. Did the DNA come from dinosaur fossils?
No, it
I
came,
thought it was the
came
Irish
from
giant.
Yeah, the
The Irish giant. I wasn't sure if that was a translation error of a dinosaur in Ireland.
They said it was found in a mine over 100 years ago.
And the Irish giant?
Yeah.
Is that actually just a tall human?
It was just an unusually large humanoid, and he took DNA samples from that and spliced it with the T-virus, which is how he created his new strain.
Okay.
But I just found that interesting because that was the original story of the progenitor virus. It was found within a fossilised human. I wonder if that was deliberately recycled.
Okay, let's move on to... we'll stick with the B.S.A. Sophie.
Yeah.
She is very good looking.
It's not just that. It's not just that. I mean, she's an extremely attracting lady. But Resident Evil, again, another lavish more praise on this series. God, they do get some cracking female characters in this series. She's not just eye candy. She's actually, she's a very strong, very independent character, and she's in it quite a lot. She's nearly a top billing cast member, really, given the screen, stage time, should I say.
And I think it was good to have some other B.S.A. because obviously with Resident Evil 5, when all the B.S.A. came out, you had the North American branch and the West Africa. But over time, we've had more and more creep in, so it was good to have the Oceania branch, which is great because it's exactly where it should be. This is the type of thing that you would expect the B.S.A. to turn up to. And I like that continuity of that.
Strictly speaking, wouldn't it be their jurisdiction anyway?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Do they have an Asia branch, the B.S.A.A.?
Yes, Far Eastern branch.
Doesn't make much sense why Chris is there in China, but hey.
I thought Sophie was a good foil for Barrington. She was like the only one who sort of stood up to him, because Chris and Piers just tried to appease him, really, whereas Sophie was the only one who just said, yeah, you're a dick.
One thing I lost watching it, and again it's down to the subtitles more than I think it is the direction or anything like that, I wasn't entirely sure what her injury was or where she got it.
I think she got it at the sort of weird Japanese dance sequence at the start of the second act, where they were attacking.
But it's not a bite or anything then?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Because Rebecca heals her with some green herb.
I know.
Did you notice Chris, in his uniform, he had the little sort of green and red vials from Resident Evil 5?
I didn't. No.
Yeah, he's got the green and red herbs in like liquid form from Resident Evil 5 on his vest.
I've got the stage running in the background just so it's jogging my memory, so I'll have a look. And I love the first aid spray.
It doesn't work.
Well, it's because he's already become a zombie at that point, really, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's on my list of plus points. Yes, the use of green herbs was especially high on that. So, a minor character, we'll go back to Poshborough. because he's a legend. Yes, he was given the spray, but he was too far gone. He was bit. That was at the party, wasn't it? Was it the party, the musical bit?
No, he gets bitten in the first scene. He turns up where they find him hiding in the bathroom, and that crawling zombie comes out and bites him on the leg.
I wasn't sure he got. Oh.
I think he gets bitten there, but he doesn't. None of the others notice, and I think he hides it.
Okay.
I think you can see it. I think I noticed it.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of holding his leg for a second, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, Paul, what was your views on the B.S.A.A. agents as the characters in this? Did you think they were accurate?
Like I say, I had an overall problem generally with the characters all, just for me, feeling a little wooden. The only one really that stood out, I suppose, was Rebecca. I found the police chap investigator that had his initial suspicions of her seemed a little bit over the top for me, almost like pantomime-esque. It certainly didn't come across as cheesy. It just, like I say, everything felt for me a bit muted. But again, I felt, well, this is very much me watching it over YouTube with subtitles, and actually maybe there in the theatre I would have connected with the characters a lot more.
Okay, moving on to Ezra then. We've touched on his perhaps naivety as to the T-virus. I don't know if he was a seasoned actor, but I think he played...
Yeah, Sonny Chiba's a massive actor in Japan. He's been in the Battle Royale sequel. He was Hattori Hanzo in Kill Bill, who gives Uma Thurman the sword.
Oh, wow.
He forges it for her.
I didn't notice that. I know the chap you mean. He's fantastic.
He's
a
massive Japanese actor. He's like the bloody Robert De Niro of Japan, if you like.
What a coup for them to get him then, I'd imagine.
I did think he put in a powerful performance at times. Him and Tyler Howard put in quite good emotive performances.
See, that doesn't surprise me in the sense of even without recognising him, I certainly preferred the performances of the older actors. It was more sort of the younger ones that, for me, didn't kind of lacked like the depth.
But he has been in a lot, hasn't he? Bloody hell.
Look at that Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
He had quite a good backstory, didn't he? When it showed that little flashback at the end of his parents getting shot in the war, and
that was done really well, actually.
Yeah.
Quite, visually done, with silhouettes and things like that. It was very impressive.
His whole philosophy was built on the because he said he went to work in the rescue tent moving bodies, and one of the medics said to him, he said, war will always continue because humans never learn from their mistakes, and that's what makes him live his life the way he does.
Is it a bit of a failing of the stage, therefore, that he was that naive about what the T-virus does? Yes, he may have been presented with Mary Gray's, look, give someone T-virus, they become super intelligent with a willingness to learn. But, he would have known about Raccoon City, he would have known about bioterrorism, he would have known about what generally it does.
Because Raccoon City and Terra Grigia would have been called out as big T-virus attacks, wouldn't they? And degeneration.
Exactly.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, you get the impression, don't you, that when the zombies start showing up, he knows that Professor Howard has caused it all, because he gets angry, doesn't he? But I think he just doesn't want to admit it to himself, because he's so blinded that in the right hands the virus can be used for good things.
Which is something that the series hasn't really touched on yet.
No.
It's a bit of a breath of fresh air.
Yes, no, that's true.
Rather than the virus just yet again being used as sort of a black market tool to get as much money as possible.
Yeah, and he adopted Matthew, didn't he, from an orphanage, because Matthew had an outstanding IQ, and because he was an orphan, he didn't have the environment around him to educate himself, which is one of the reasons he built the university.
So I think it's a great backstory for a series which has primarily, over the last 10 years, been about presidential assassinations and presidents' daughters being kidnapped. And
I think we have to give it credit to be able to get that amount of backstory for all these, because there's a lot of characters in this, in such a short period of time, and it's actually portrayed in a quite a believable manner.
It's an ambitious story. It does trip itself up a little bit, like there's a big deal made of Barrington trying to keep it on the low down, and he doesn't want the public to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
But then in a completely separate scene, Sophie says, the entire university perimeter is surrounded by B.S.A.A. soldiers from the Oceania branch. So someone's going to see them and wonder what's going on. So,
yes,
it does trip itself up a little bit from time to time.
So moving on to Tyler, I thought, especially at the end, he's quite cold and calculated, and it didn't seem much of a stretch of acting. But by the end, when he does have his confrontation with his father, I thought that was very powerful and believable. And just wanting to say, to tell his dad that I'm here, I am alive, but he just wouldn't accept it at all. I thought it was very good.
I quite like the mystery that surrounded him at the beginning. I think the mystery about the character was one of the things that, really sort of drove it for me.
I was going to say, I was thinking back to what past comment Batman had said about why he liked the first game, and it was sort of like an investigation mystery. And I sort of thought of that when I was also reminded of the way it played out in the first half hour. in the way that the Walking Dead's latter series have been more about the battles between the humans rather than, the zombies. And to begin with, there was a lot of that sort of mystery, and the enemies at first, to me, all the sort of the main antagonists, were humans, and I was waiting to find out were zombies or, and a viral outbreak even going to play a part in it, because it all seemed to be like conspiracies between the various human characters.
Yeah. I think on the whole it's a grand success. I would say I preferred the first hour more than the second.
Yeah.
The irony is not lost on me that a series famed for being about sort of zombie survival, and this main second hour is about that, and it's my least favourite part of it.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
When it's a sort of power struggle between these individual parties, it's quite fascinating to see all the sort of little secret meetings going on in the independent parts of the university. Rebecca sort of goes up the steps and then eavesdrops on conversations.
Yeah, it's very different halves, isn't it?
When you have the intermission, it definitely changes gear.
Yeah.
Because Tyler spends most of the first half following the others, doesn't he? Just sort of hiding in the shadows. And the only person he really interacts with is Mary, and she thinks she has a connection with him because he says he doesn't feel alive.
Yes. So the main perpetrator of all this is Ryan Howard, who is the father of Tyler and the creator of the T. Howard virus, or whatever it's been dubbed by Newsbot. He was a maniac, really, wasn't he? Through the grief of the loss of his son. And I think, again, that was played very well, because you weren't quite sure, as it went on, you weren't quite sure what his intentions really were. And I think it's only right up to the very end you kind of then worked out, actually, he's a bit of a jackass.
He's just a tragic anti-hero, isn't he? I mean, he's not out-and-out evil, is he? Because
No.
I think he mentions it towards the end in his exposition scene. He said he knew when he was working for Umbrella that the work they were doing was illegal and wrong, but he just thought, if I complete the research, get the money, then I can provide, a proper life for my son, which is all he wanted. And it was Mary's manipulation of him when he lost Tyler and he failed to bring him back alive. That's what ultimately drove him mad.
It's implied that he frantically searches for the corpse, and I think the frustration of not being imagine a parent who loses their son, but you can't obviously confirm the death because you can't find the body. So it's in a sense it's like missing in action more than it is actually killed in action.
Yeah.
What did you think, George?
Did I understand it right? There was sort of shades of Javier and Manuela.
Yep.
That's a good call, actually. I've not thought of that.
I mean, it just reminded me of that, Stars, when you mentioned about the desperation, that he wasn't all out necessarily bad. And I really like that when Resident Evil do that, they pull an antagonist out that isn't just all and out evil, the way that maybe Wesker became, and almost from the start, he was very much like that. So yeah, I thought there was shades of that, and the desperation. I enjoyed that bit.
We'll move on to Barrington. Interesting name.
He's fine. I mean, he is just like the disposable bad guy, and ultimately it meets a disposable death, if you like. But I found him fine, and I thought he was played reasonably well. He had that sort of that typical just sort of slime ball actor playing him. He was the actor everyone loves to hate. But he was fine for what he was, which was a foil for the characters in the first half.
Yeah.
While the main sort of intrigue was happening, he was the one who was sort of causing all the problems, and that's fine. Which is why he's dispatched fairly quickly at the beginning of Act 2, because he sort of served his purpose.
It was quite refreshing how he was just in it for the money, though, because I was fully expecting him to try and steal the virus and have some sort of reveal that he was working for some rival corporation or something. It was, it was nice that he was just motivated by greed.
And as we know, too much greed weakens an organisation.
Exactly, yeah.
So finally, Mary Gray, as one of the main characters. Again, we've touched on the fact that she's a bit like Manuela in that she bonded with the virus. I think my main issue is a bit what Sergei did, how she was able to mutate on command. I find that quite strange. And why she didn't necessarily mutate into a tyrant either.
Did Sergei bond perfectly with it then as well?
Personally, I just think Sergei injected himself in Umbrella Chronicles. We just don't see it.
That's always been true, isn't it?
Yeah, but in Umbrella Chronicles, it's portrayed as if he's just talking to Wesker, and then he suddenly just triggers his mutation automatically.
But up until that point, you're not even aware he is infected with anything, are you?
I don't think he's infected at all until Wesker confronts him, and then he injects himself with the virus. Because you can't. The T virus doesn't work like that. You can't trigger your mutation on command like you can with a dominant plaga mutation.
Until Mary Gray.
Well, Mary's got that thing on her wrist, doesn't she? That continuously injects her with the virus, so she might have just pressed it and taken an overdose. we don't really see, do we?
Stuff like that could be lost in the subtitles, though.
That's very true.
Until we get
Because
a solid translation, some of it is still a mystery, which we must stress to people listening. We're still not in complete possession of the storyline or the facts, because the subtitles are a mess.
I will add as well that the subtitles on YouTube don't match the subtitles on the official DVD.
I should say yours are probably a lot better.
They are better, but there's still plenty of mistakes in them.
That's a really good point you made, though, because they do make a big point of Ezra cuddling the severed arm of Mary at the end, and it does note that red thing on the wrist. You know, perhaps that is a point. But does viruses work like that? I mean, this would be something I suppose the doctor can look into.
Well,
being injected with a lot of virus, should that make a difference?
Well, I think it's mentioned that the work out a treatment plan. Ryan Howard, when he was still at Umbrella, worked out a treatment plan, and that device on a wrist injects her with precise amounts of the virus. I suppose it's similar to that thing Jill has on her chest in Resident Evil 5.
And I suppose similar to what Wesker has with PG.
Yeah.
And
I suppose at the end you could maybe argue that because she didn't give a shit anymore, she just pressed the button and injected too much. I don't know.
It's almost a wonder that, you know, if the device got taken off her, would she actually sort of be less psychopathic?
Yeah.
I suppose you would just die, a
Yeah,
bit like
basically,
the progenitor.
It's whether the virus amplifies something, you know, within a personality or whatever. Because Manuela doesn't have anything like that, does she? She doesn't have a device.
No. I do wonder, as you mentioned earlier, if she does have some form of superhuman powers, which is suggested in the fight scene.
That's what it comes across like to me, anyway.
I'd say it has to be, because I was actually thinking, was there any back reference to any, martial arts training she had done? And there was even that scene when someone actually holds a gun and they seem to be firing, appalling aiming, or they were trying to get that technique across that she was, the speed was too much for them.
Because, Chris and Tyler both have some good fights throughout the play, but she seems to just, chuck them around with very little effort.
Yeah.
At one point, she sort of takes the gun off Rebecca and spins around, and the actress who plays Rebecca sort of turns in almost slow motion back toward her, and then as she faces her, Mary just sort of leaps away. I did like the little kiss she does on Rebecca's gun. Cool.
Yeah.
There were points when she seemed to be mocking Rebecca and sort of laughing at her, and again, I wasn't sure if that was coming from the dialogue or if that was like accentuating the fact that they were just so ineffectual against her because of the superpowers.
That was really good when she was sort of laughing, and you could really tell she was struggling to stay in control.
I will say, I love a lot of Japanese cinema and things like that, and the women in particular, and like the girl in this is a prime example of it, they can do insane so well.
Yeah.
But I suppose overall it should be commended. The acting is good, it's feasible, it's believable. I think theatre is one of those things. I'm not a big theatre goer. In fact, I've been once, but you get into it. If you're there, you properly get into it. So I went to see The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, something like that. It's bloody sensational. That was a very high production piece, but you do get into it. Even if the stage remains exactly the same as it does in this the whole time. What have they got? They've got one step, 2 stairs, a balcony, and a couple of rooms. But they're able to use, the clever lighting techniques and clever use of videos, and you become immersed. And certainly the flashbacks help enormously in getting the right feel of Biohazard, which I think the director should be commended for doing that.
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of theatre and I've been to quite a few productions, and I think the production value on this was exceptional. The way they use projection on the sets is really clever. It's how you can instantly go from flashback to sort of present day. And the great thing I like about theatre, and it's so much more immersive than the cinema in many ways, because it asks you have to sort of pay so much more attention because it asks so much of your imagination.
Yeah.
You have to just sort of completely, fully immerse yourself into that world, and even though you can sort of see the set sliding in and stairs move away, you have to just sort of be able to sort of not see that in the corner of your eye to concentrate. And I think they did a great job of that, because what they do is they do put so many little things in the background to distract you from the set changing, like a character lurking in one of the archways or whatever. So while your eyes are drawn to that, they are actually cleverly changing the blocking and things like that, the actors. I think it's very well done, and considering the amount of action and gunplay and things like that, although the guns obviously don't have any flashes or anything, it's still done very well.
And it's very good that they have characters going down the aisles as well to make the stage that bit bigger.
And another thing we've got to touch upon This is no joke, people who've seen it, and it works. We've seen it, and I can stress to you, it's not cheesy. It works perfectly. There are door sequences.
Yes, it's on my list. It's on my list.
Yeah, they do work very well. And that was one of the sort of little things that were fantastic that they took from the games, to the point where I was wondering, did they even get that fossilization and the origins of the progenitor story, in 3.5?
I'd also say as another on my plus points, along with the herbs and the first aid sprays, Rebecca, continuity, storyline, and the door loading sequences. The use of files and diary entry.
Oh, the typing on the set.
That was so good.
It was just reduced to a few text messages on a phone. I was hoping to get proper files. I wanted Ryan's diaries and all sorts.
Dario
God.
That's a big ask.
I think that's a big ask, and I think for what they did, I think it captured the moment, and it captured classic Biohazard very well.
What frustrates the hell out of me is that in a stage production, and this shit is hard to get right, they managed to put in classic Resident Evil references and things like that without it being on the nose like the Paul Anderson films are. It's almost like there's a big fucking neon sign above the event in a Paul Anderson film, which is like, hey fans, this is Resident Evil, look. I've got the newspaper from the first Resident Evil game here. Look, let me hold the camera on it that much longer so you can be sure it's the right newspaper.
Yeah, you're right, because when she goes up to the bookcase, if you didn't know of that reference, it wasn't out there, was it? It just looked quite normal. But for those in the know, it was a nice little reference.
I liked when they were searching around the different parts of the university, it brought the map up as well, so you could see where...
Yes,
oh, it's so good.
No, I love that. And again, it's not like the fucking hive and all those, the thing that he does where you see them going down the elevator. Did you notice a lot of that styling almost felt
like
almost old-fashioned? Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And what about when Chris went up to the Irish giant and moved it to reveal a secret door?
And the noise, the sound effects.
He's
and then
even doing the same pushing.
The ceiling trap.
Yeah.
The crushing ceiling trap. All it needed was a shotgun on the wall.
These are the guys we want writing Resident Evil 7.
But doesn't this frustrate you that Paul Anderson has had millions and millions of dollars to do this shit, and a stage production, which doesn't look massively high budget, has done it effortlessly?
We can joke about it, but actually there's a serious point there. You're right. The amount of budget he gets to do what he produces with that budget, that and that Capcom associate their name to, and they're associated their name to this as well. And you're right. Look what they managed to achieve. I hope that's not lost on Capcom. I really do.
Yeah, the map was great. The crushing bit was good. I was waiting for Barry just to suddenly turn up for no reason.
When Chris pushed the Irish giant, it was almost like watching a puzzle unfold before your eyes, wasn't it?
But as you said, it flowed so well, and it didn't feel forced. It felt, there's a secret lab in this university.
All it lacked was Rebecca typing something on a typewriter, and we'd have been there.
Yeah. I think even something like a piano scene would have been.
You get a piano scene, don't you?
But it's like what you said, though. It worked because it wasn't on the nose. Because they could have very easily put like a typewriter in the background and loads of stuff and really oversaturated it with references. But
it was its own story.
Yeah, they got it just about right.
And of course, I love the fact with absolutely no explanation, Rebecca turns up. Oh, Chris, here's a rocket launcher.
Yeah,
that's one of the more tenuous bits, to be fair, but.
But it's the right way about ending a BOW's life at the end. I just thought, and it looked like the rocket launcher as well. It was a nice bit of.
I will just assume that an Oceania branch person ran it in from the outside.
I don't care. By that time, I was so happy that I just let that one pass. I was like, yeah, of course there's a rocket launcher just hanging up on the wall.
Let's put this one down to Rebecca. She figured some weird shit was going on, and she knows in any biohazard outbreak you need a rocket launcher.
I need a rocket launcher.
Doesn't Chris give her the keys to his van? Or
maybe.
Am I making that up? I can't remember.
Just give her the keys at some point, yeah.
Maybe she gets it from there.
And of course, he carries rocket launchers in case Wesker suddenly gets resurrected.
Ooh.
Ryan Howard's little mutation was quite good as well.
That looked amazing.
Given the restrictions, yeah.
For people who didn't know that, they kind of do a thing, they black out the person's face with the lights, and then they put a kind of computerized image of them then turning into a zombie. It's quite a clever technique of being able to show a transformation without getting that person off stage and then putting in makeup.
His arm swells as well.
Yeah, and rips through his lab coat, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that.
I assume it's just compressed air into an inflatable.
Because he injected himself with his virus,
Yeah.
It was the T. Howard, so we kind of saw what would happen to that, but we don't know if he would have mutated even more.
Because Tyler goes a bit crazy and kills him.
Yeah.
With gun nuts will appreciate this, that they even do their research with the weapons in this. Tyler is carrying a Beretta M93R, which is the gun that Claire has in Code Veronica, and he fires it in bursts.
Bloody hell.
Which
Wow.
is
Brilliant.
Which
I
is
wouldn't
correct.
have known that. Oh, wow.
And Barrington has a rather nice...
Revolver.
Yeah. I assumed it was a Colt Python, but I could be wrong. I don't know enough about guns.
It's interesting how Chris didn't trust him straight away enough to remove the bullets,
Yeah.
but then still gives him a loaded
Yeah.
laser sight firearm.
Yeah. It didn't really work, that bit.
So in terms of the plot moving forward, it's one of these very self-contained storylines, but we think there may be some consequence going forward with Vendetta. Hopefully there's a reference.
Well, if nothing else, the play ends with a to be continued.
Why does the case start beeping at the end?
Oh no, I assumed it was a bomb.
Yeah, I thought it was going to blow up and kill him, but then I thought, well, why would it do that, and why would it say to be continued?
Because the Vendetta is his.
I'd say if Vendetta is a direct sequel to the stage, that would be incredible. I don't think it will be, but...
But then, why bring Rebecca back? Coincidence is just too much, surely.
Unless they do a sequel stage play, because I think it was quite successful in Japan. I think most showings were sold out.
Is it still not on the go?
No, it ran for about 3 weeks last winter.
Oh, okay.
If they brought it to the West, I would go and see it.
Oh my god, I'd be there in a heartbeat.
I mean, obviously it'd be probably the Western actors, but it's funny because I said I've been watching this in the background while we've been talking about it as well. I've just got it running on another screen, and it's actually at the mid-sequence battle, the music thing, and it just reminds me of like one of those big battle sequences you get in anime that's put to music, like the opening credits of an anime where it's all sort of swirly backgrounds, and it's really cool. They always give it's just the bit where it superimposes sort of the profile slow-mo bits over the action in the background, and it's awesome. It's really awesome.
If I remember, you do get a bit of a kind of RE1 original Biohazard kind of berry burp.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It doesn't announce the name.
No.
And I must say as well, while I was just on the topic of the sort of montage bits, the sequences where they have the umbrellas are so well done.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I wasn't sure if I was being too harsh on this, but it was too easy for me to say that's so cheesy, just using an umbrella, and I almost felt that they were going to start break into a dance routine, but you like.
I'll admit, it gave me goosebumps right at the start when all the umbrellas just flipped up and at the same time.
You liked it?
Oh, I thought it was brilliant.
I loved it as well.
I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
No, I think I'm just being too. Yeah, I don't know.
But that concern you had there, Paul, is interesting because we do know now that they are pursuing a Biohazard musical.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing, you're probably going to see in spades.
That song at the start of Act 2 is sung by the actress who plays Sophie, and it was the song used to promote Resident Evil 0 HD.
Wow.
She's a famous pop star in Japan, I've just found out.
I can't remember what the name.
I've shared the picture of her earlier.
Can't remember what the name of the song is. It's Rachel, is it Rachel?
That's it, yeah, Rachel.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think one thing that gives me heart, if they do go down that route with a musical and just for any further stage plays, I think overall, for something that I think was an extreme challenge for them to put across and just even to come across without being, too cheesy or just over dramatic, I think they've done really, really well with it.
Yeah.
So the big question is, does Resident Evil work in a stage play format?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
It works better than a couple of the numbered titles.
Or certainly better than any of the live action films we've seen.
I was surprised how action orientated it was. I was expecting more of a slow burning mystery story with a lot of sort of exposition. I wasn't really expecting a full on zombie outbreak with B.S.A.A. soldiers running around and that. So
didn't you feel certainly the first sort of 3/4 of an hour very much felt like that though?
it did. I was disappointed because I felt the zombies turned up far too early. I was just sort of getting to know all the characters, then all of a sudden these zombies started showing up. I wouldn't have minded an extra sort of 10-15 minutes just getting to know everyone. Because I agree with Sean, I think Act 1 was a lot stronger than Act 2. And it felt like towards the end of the play, they shoehorned in a lot of exposition to explain the characters' backstories. Like they all seem to take turns being held hostage, explaining the life story, and then one of them would escape, and then someone else would do the same. And yeah, I would have liked it to have been a bit more of a slow burner at the start.
I would have liked a bit more gore. I will caveat all this by going, I'm being extremely nitpicky. I would have liked to see some fake kind of blood go when they got attacked, but that really is interesting. It's also interesting to see the return of Resident Evil G Generation quick zombie changes came back, i.e. I've bitten and I turn into a zombie within seconds.
Well, that was another thing, wasn't it? Because Posh Brown didn't change for a good hour, whereas Barrington changed straight away.
Yeah.
I think that's always been inconsistent in the series, though, to be fair, hasn't it?
And I think depending on the scene or the plot they're sort of trying to pursue or go down at the time, I think that's going to determine. I don't think they do that a lot with The Walking Dead, which is frustrating. It needs must. Then someone will need to turn that quick, just because of the point in the story.
It's like it's implied in the beginning of Resident Evil 2 that the lorry driver turns almost instantly. How can you still be driving a lorry whilst turning into a zombie?
But then, each human's different, isn't it? And, Mary Gray's someone, for example, we're going to add on the list of unique T-virus kind of mutations and whatnot, so why can't someone can take days, as we see in the Arklay Mountains? Okay, so before we go to kind of our final wrap-ups, we do have a call-in. Yes, we do. This comes in from PU member Lou, L-E-W. It'd be interesting to hear what he has to say.
Hey guys, it's Lou here. I know it's been a while since the last podcast that I called in on, but I saw you were all watching Bio the Stage, and I just wanted to give a few thoughts. I was actually really excited for this thing, mainly because I knew some of the actors going in. They've been in a few of the superhero shows, the Japanese superhero shows that I watch. So that was one of the big drives for me, and I was also kind of going in anticipating it being a train wreck, but it turned out to be a pleasant experience. I was actually very, very happy with it. If I had to say there was anybody who really stole the show for me, it was probably, there were two people, I would say. The first was Yuji Kishi, who was the guy who played Ryan Howard. He's a favorite actor of mine, so he was phenomenal. He was incredibly hammy, and it was just perfect for him. Rin Asuka, who was Rebecca, also really surprised me because she got the character down pat. She was a dead ringer for her, and I just loved it. I think and also obviously Sonny Chiba as Ezra was phenomenal. Just he delivered cradling a rubber hand at the end, even though I was cracking up at that. I think he did just a great job. Everybody did such a great job. As far as the plot's concerned, I liked it. At first, I didn't like it so much, but when I rewatched it the other day, as part of a series playthrough I'm going through, I liked it more. I think it's a very good Biohazard plot. I think it's a very, very good story. And I love the idea of it basically being a game, that they are going through the Philosophy University and characters are getting picked off. You get the files, you get all that, and I think that's great. If I had to say there was a part that didn't work, it was probably the Howard family thing, just because it felt like a typical Japanese soap opera misunderstanding of, my son is dead after being a cop. Please ignore the fact that you're right here in front of me, son. I made bioweapons to bring you back. And it's just like, I get it, but it was kind of silly. The logic was contrived, but I did love the final scene of Tyler shooting Ryan. But yeah, that and the entire info dump at the end about the intelligence and the virus, it didn't do it for me. I thought it was a little ridiculous and overdone, but what can you do? I did think Mary Gray was a great character, though, and her actress, I can't think of her name, she was part of that AKB48 big pop idol thing in Japan, so I didn't expect her to have acting chops, but she did when she kind of just goes totally unhinged at the end, just rambling on and kissing Sophie's gun and all that. It was great. The production values were awesome. The costumes were wonderful. Loved it, especially with Chris and Piers. It was kind of funny hearing a ton of recycled RE0 and 6 music, and though the thing that killed me was the fight scene with the J-pop song, which is sung by Sophie's actress, Rachel. It's called Until the Justice, and yeah, it's a promo song for RE0, so they slipped that in there, and it just was killing me that they had that sequence. I lost it. Overall, though, without rambling on too long, I think it was great. The atmosphere was wonderful. I thought it was just really intense. If there was anything I think was hit or miss, the only other thing was Posh Brown and the comedy there. Very Japanese comedy. I mean, it's the kind of thing I'll either love or hate. I didn't think it worked that well, and also the digital stuff didn't work too great either, with the CGI jeeps and the projected zombie faces. But at the same time, the tension, the action, the choreography was great. And this idea of just having a nice little side story to give us some closure with Rebecca, and to give us a nice little side story to show Chris and Piers' early missions too, was awesome. And Piers was awesome. I thought Piers was awesome. And on top of all that, it was nice to see Piers getting fleshed out a bit, because, he was being a little flirty with Sophie, and that's actually kind of how he is from what I've read of Marhawa Desire. So yeah, I think it was great. It was like Batman said of, you're gutted more by Piers' loss by the time you get to 6, if you go in the story order. Anyways, yeah, I think that Biohazard the stage was great. I would love to see a sequel, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. So thanks again, and y'all take care, and happy 20th anniversary to the series and all that. Later.
I will not hear a bad word against Posh Brown. But aside from that,
it was interesting to hear the caliber of the actors, and I enjoyed the fact that he had a real insight into who these guys are that I don't, and made me, just on that point alone, want to kind of watch it through again. Maybe I can concentrate a little bit more on their performances and have to worry less about reading the subs at the beginning. Because you can do both at the same time, obviously, but just about But you do focus a lot more away from.
Of course, yeah. But that's true. When you're first watching, you want to know the story, and so as you said, you're concentrating on that. But now you know the general gist. You may be able to watch it for the acting.
He's right about the Posh Brown humour though, because I see that humour in a lot of Japanese games, like the Phoenix Wright games has eccentric, crazy characters like that, and they are characters you either love or hate.
I think we sometimes forget, Resident Evil is, I think, for a Japanese game is very westernized, and in an interview that's out there, Angus Waycott, the Morpheus Duval voice actor, I remember he was mentioning about how some people sort of view Japanese culture as sort of almost funny because it's different, but it's not actually humorous. It's just it's quite eccentric to us, and I can imagine those characters are a lot more prominent in other video games, and we don't so much get that in Resident Evil. That feels very westernized.
He was right about the Ryan Howard, Tyler Howard thing as well. After only 5 years, Ryan should recognise his son, especially when he's got an identical pendant round his neck and the goodbye letter he wrote him.
Yeah.
Grief-stricken. Your hypothesis earlier was probably correct. By the time we see him in the stage, he's so down that path.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's what you would say to justify it, I guess. But it's interesting that he found that it was closure for Rebecca, whereas I actually see this as the beginning of them reintroducing her in many ways, especially with Vendetta on the horizon.
Well, thank you, Lou, very much for that call-in. That was possibly one of our most informative call-ins we've ever had. Just because, obviously, clearly he's got a significant vested interest in Japanese action films and actors, so that input is really useful to know. And, yeah, great. Thank you very much. So,
please send more people. I've just had one. I've just literally just put on Twitter, does anyone have any questions while we record? And Vito's been on again.
Go on then, what's Vito's question?
He's just asking, what's up with Piers' B.S.A.A. joining date? The stage states joined in 2009, but 6 states he joined in 2010. That's what he's asked.
Yeah, there is a continuity error there. The files in Resident Evil 6 state that Piers joined the B.S.A.A. in 2010, whereas the stage play actually makes an error in that regard and says it's 2009. Chris becomes Alpha Team captain in 2010 and recruits Piers because Piers was serving in the army at the time and was becoming quite disillusioned, and Chris took note of his superior sniping skills and recruited him. So yeah, that is an error in the stage.
Is that just a Western translation error in 6? Or?
No, that's in both versions of 6. The stage players just got it wrong in that regard. It should be 2010, not 2009.
So while we're on it quickly then, just to so we've covered every base, you'll be better than this than I am, John. Is there any errors that contradict the direct canon in this, other than that?
There is one other minor issue I picked up on, but I think again it comes down to the script and the translation. The characters seem to get mixed up about when Umbrella collapsed. There's a bit, I can't remember exactly what the wording is now, but there's a bit of dialogue to suggest that Umbrella was still around when the outbreak happened in Rochester in 2005, which obviously can't be the case. But other than that, no, everything seems to be fine. I don't think there's any issues with the canonicity of the stage play. We've got a very firm exact date for when it happens, which is set nicely between the end of Resident Evil 5 and sort of 6 months before Resident Evil Damnation. You've already explained the natural progression with Chris's character. There's no issues with Rebecca being a B.S.A.A. consultant, so no, there's nothing in there at all that breaks canon. There's just one or two little continuity errors. The date with Piers is the most obvious one.
It's worth pointing out that this actually does take place on the 12th of August, is it?
Yeah.
2010. I was just literally flashed the date up in front of me and I'm not getting it. Which way do Japanese do their dates? Is it the same as America? It's not the 8th of December.
No, yeah, it's Americanized, yeah. The wrong way.
There we go. So, yeah, Vita also asked a question on PU, whether it's been confirmed as being canon 100%.
I don't think Capcom have speculated, but I think if you look on the cast list on the website, there's definitely some Capcom Japan staff members who supervised the story, and just the fact that they've made such a big effort with it to make sure it does fit nicely between 5 and 6. I don't think there's any issues with it. I think it's definitely 100% canon.
We've just had a question from JJH Steinman at BBMac on Twitter. Might be a bit late. What do you think of where Rebecca has ended up, and what do you want to see for her in the future? I'd just like to have the backstory elaborated on a little bit in Vendetta. You know, see exactly what she's been up to, and whether they use Vendetta to bookend the character and finish her arc, so be it. At least we'll have some idea, really.
The fact that she's a consultant for the B.S.A.A. isn't all that surprising, but because she's only a consultant implies that she's been doing something else alongside that, so I'm hoping Vendetta will reveal that, but something like a teacher role or some sort of paramedic or something like that would suit her background, I think.
The problem with the CGI films is that they don't normally get people's characters particularly exciting, Leon being the standouts.
He's the only one who's pretty much in them, though, isn't he? To be fair. I will say this though, I think they've handled Rebecca extremely well, and your comparison earlier of her being likened to Claire, and that is a very natural role for her to go in, as opposed to just a woman of action like Jill.
Well, thank you very much for the question. More people want to tweet or send questions about any of you, that would be great. So, marks out of 10 and your general feeling as to the production. George, Trevor?
Definitely promising for the future if they try this again, and I was pleasantly surprised, particularly with some of the things I felt would have been much harder to pull off with the zombies and things that weren't cheesy at all. I would give it 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And I reckon I would, on a further watch through, I'd probably creep that up as well.
Batman?
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was better than what I thought it was going to be. If I was being extremely nitpickety, I would have liked a bit more music from the series rather than just the same 2 tracks from Resident Evil 6. And again, if I'm being nitpickety, I would have liked some more elaborate sets, but I suppose that comes down to the budget and the changing locations. But overall, I thought it was a good story. I thought while it was quite standalone, it added plenty of sort of nice little nuggets to the overall universe building aspects of the canon. So overall, I'd give it 8.5 out of 10.
Sean?
You reminded me of a point there, actually. I wanted to say how much I like the fact that they put Resident Evil 6 music in there. I thought that was cool. My only real nitpicks is mainly sort of little things like the Tyrant. Just the fact that it's just sort of dispatched and then forgotten about. But then, Tyrants can die without breaking their limiter, so I guess that's fine.
Survivor.
Yeah, and Resident Evil 3, you get to see the dead ones in the battery room that haven't broken their limiter. So, things like that are fine. For me, it was just a hugely enjoyable slice of some canon Biohazard, and all I kept asking myself was, and you said this before, Nick, I think you said it before I did, why isn't this Resident Evil 6? This is a cracking story. This has been perfect. It's just, you could have even done a nicely atmospheric game around the university.
Yeah.
Dare I suggest there's aspects of Tall Oaks University which almost showed you the potential of that sort of environment.
They could have easily made it, there was enough story there to make this into a really good 6-hour, 8-hour game. And the fact that I think all of us are, nitpicking to find fault is an illustration as to how successful the production has been. In my opinion, this is up there with Revelations 2, which, as you know, I love Revelations 2. And this is something I want to own on a DVD format with, Western subtitles properly done, so we can all... Because I think everyone needs to see this. This isn't a case of like Biohazard the Real, which everyone would enjoy, but not that major. This is major piece of work that it's simply not fair that Japan gets it and we don't. And I hope everyone does take the time to watch it and get into it. And I think it's great. And I personally would give it a 9.
I was just hearing what you said about a westernised version would just be so wonderful, because some of the voice actors themselves are actors in their own right and theatre actors. And Riva De Paula, who plays Rebecca Chambers, she's a theatrically trained actress. And how wonderful would it be to see her performing as Rebecca in the stage play? If they brought it over here. And I think there's every suggestion to say that it would work well, because I think they pulled it off really well with this first one.
it really pisses me right off that you finally get something that has the Biohazard name attached to it that's genuinely good, and yet outside of people who listen to this podcast, people who frequent Project Umbrella, it's going to be genuinely unknown to the fan base, to the cosplayers and the fucking speedrunners that are being promoted so much on the Resident Evil pages at the minute. And yet, this is something that is genuinely good, and yet in the West you get Umbrella Corps.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, because you would have thought, wouldn't you, that if it is available, is it officially available with subtitles? Because if so, you'd want to expect to see it on Capcom's main feed.
Only from Play Asia.
I imported the DVD. It's quite expensive.
Is it good with features? You get some behind the scenes stuff or anything?
You get behind the scenes stuff, but none of that's in English. There's no subtitles for that.
You're right, Stars, because has there been any reference to it whatsoever on any official Capcom feed outside of Japan?
I've just finished adding it all to the Biohazard timeline, and I know when I release it, people will send me emails saying, "Why have you put that in? It's not canon. It's a Japanese stage play." Wanker.
Oh, get your email.
We get your wanker
email.
Well, I think that's been a really, really interesting look at it, and as I said, I would urge everyone to load up YouTube and take a couple of hours to watch it. So with that in mind, we now move on to the season finale of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. New format. New questions. And new challenges. Each broadcast, a new quiz to test the resolve. Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz! Playing this week are Batman, Stars Tyrant, George Trevor, and Mr. Spencer. As it is the season finale of the podcast, we do have final scores to be dealing with. So looking back over the past season, the leaderboard looks like this. With 0 wins, it's Mr. Spencer and George Trevor. With 1 win, it's Stars Tyrant. Romby has 2 wins, but sadly can't be with us this evening. With a staggering 8 wins, it's Batman. So, Batman, you are currently leading. If we convert these wins to points, you have 8 points, Stars Tyrant with 1 point, Mr. Spencer and George with 0.
God, it's so...
Can the three of us team up against him?
However, Biohazard quizzes, beware. This is not the ordinary quiz, oh no. So hold on tight, open up Notepad, as we play the Series 3 finale quiz, A Question of Biohazard. Cue the music.
Oh God, fuck off, Subaka. You were so obnoxious. I hated Question of Sport.
Anyone who has watched A Question of Sport will know some of the formats that are used. We have 2 rounds, gentlemen. The first is the always popular scoreboard, and the second is home or away. Questions are courtesy of USS Command, Crimson Elder, and Vito. So, I have to say, we've got some toughies. We start with round 1, which is very much based on Biohazard's Survival Door, which of course is that very popular mobile phone game. So we have a board of 10, and players will take it in turns to pick numbers, and I will read out the correlating question. It's a point for the correct answer, but you will lose a point if you give me an incorrect number. I will say from the outset that the questions vary from easy to ridiculously difficult, and there is no correlation between number 10 being ridiculously hard and number 1 being very easy. It's completely random. So we'll start with the current leader with 8 points. Batman, please pick a number between 1 and 10.
Ooh, number 10.
Number 10. Who was the police officer investigating the theft of the jewels in the RPD?
Oh, Marvin Branagh.
Correct! Hey, very good.
Hey.
Jesus, it fucking fakes.
Alright, I could...
I didn't even have time to go on Google then.
Because it's such an easy question.
yeah.
Anyone who's played the fucking game knows that.
I did warn you previously. Stars Tyrant, pick a number between 1 and 9 now. Number
7.
Let's see what number 7 is. Where is Brad Vickers' hometown?
Oh, it's in a file. It's in the EX file in Resident Evil 2, and I fucking can't remember it because he talks about the flowers, and I can't fucking remember it past. DeSala or something. Delicia or...
Correct!
Oh, you
Nah,
cheeky
it's not.
bastard.
Delicia is correct. Point to Stars. Mr. Spencer, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 or 9.
2.
Ooh. Question number 2. What is the helicopter designation of the B.S.A.A. helicopters in Resident Evil 6?
Jesus.
Fuck it. You know what? Just fuck it. I pass with that. That's bullshit, yeah.
That's incorrect.
Bullshit.
The answer was, of course, A88. George Trevor, your turn.
Number 3, please.
This is a good question. In Resident Evil 6, Chris is grabbed by a civilian in the first level. What does it say on this person's t-shirt?
Is this when he's walking through the streets and he's like pushing press cameramen out of the way? I love New York.
Good shout. It's to be or not to be, that is the question. Back to Batman.
Number 8.
Oh, God, I don't believe this. Who is Bravo Team's point man?
Oh, come on!
This is ridiculous.
That's like...
Is it Carlos Oliveira?
Horace Spire.
No, it's Kenneth Sullivan.
Bollocks.
I'd have got that fucker right as well. Jesus.
You always panic me, Bats, when you say a different answer to what I've got.
Not happy, angry.
Deducted a point. Back to Stars Tyrant.
4.
As you know, Sheva has a tattoo. There is a text in that tattoo. What is it? You may need to know Swahili.
I don't know. It came up in the bloody ambassador quiz on the email the other month.
Did it?
I can't remember. Yeah, I'm sure it was a question in the. I can't remember though. I don't know. Honestly, pass.
It's Shuja,
Which means
courageous. You lose a point there, Stars.
I'm pleased I didn't get that question because I'm not allowed to get questions right about tattoos on female Resident Evil characters. I get accused of cheating.
Still sore over that. Like, honestly.
Pick a number.
1, Jake.
What is the badge number of Sherry in Resident Evil 6?
That is ridiculous.
I don't even think I've looked at the badge number of Sherry in my life.
I didn't even know she had a badge.
What do you actually mean?
Is
the
that
badge
freeze
number?
framed in a cutscene?
I didn't even know Sherry was in Ori 6. 4-digit number.
I think they're clever. It's not even funny.
4671. I
no.
don't know.
0824. Of course. Unlucky.
I'd like to know a single person on the entire planet who would
I
have
don't
got
wanna
that, right?
I don't
It's
wanna be
almost
bored.
like people are deliberately going out their way to get like the most obscurest thing.
They are. That's a question. So, George, your final one, 5, 6, or 9?
Does it matter? 9, please.
Number 9. Describe Forrest Spear's tattoo.
I've got one Resident Evil toy because of the art of a zombie.
But if he looks at it, that's
Am I
cheating.
allowed to look at it? Where is it?
Do you even see it in the game? Oh, he's got the 1980s cut-offs, hasn't he? I passed. No, passed. Is it a tattoo of stars? The stars badge.
It's a sword through red wings. There we go. So I will say there was for Romby 2 more questions, which I'll save for another podcast. So let's have a look at the scores after round 1. The scores on the doors. Batman's still on 8. Stars Tyrant still on 1. George Trevor, Mr. Spencer yet to score.
That was worthwhile round then, wasn't it?
With Batman on 8 and the nearest to him is on what, 1? I can't quite see the point of any of this. This fucking joke.
Let's move on to round 2. It's home or away.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
So this is very important.
Was that the one where it's set on a beach?
Yes.
Was that... Is that in Australia or something?
It was home and away. Yeah.
That is, yeah.
So listen up.
Home and away.
Home questions are worth 1 point. Should you get a question wrong as your home question, you lose a point. Away questions are worth 10 points. And if you get it wrong, you don't lose any points.
Oh, he's getting scared now,
But-
isn't he, Nicholson? When he sees the 10-point reward, he's getting scared, isn't he?
But
It's only at 8 points in so high, is it?
I will say this. Home questions are canon questions. Away questions are ridiculous non-canon questions. So you know your scores, you know what you need to do.
We have to stop, Nicholson. We've got to gamble.
Mr. Spencer, as you need the points, you can go first. You want a home question or an away question?
Got to go balls deep on this. Dicks out for Harambe. I'll take an away question.
Okay. In Biohazard the Real, what is the name of the company responsible for making items used by the players?
What's it called? Biohazard
The Real.
What? The Real? Well, like R-E-E-L.
It's like a haunted maze game.
Are we allowed to buzz in if you
You don't know this.
No one knows this.
I'm going to allow it. I will. If people know an away question, yes, damn straight they can have a go.
I don't know the answer.
I'm going to open it up to George.
Well, no, I just had a thought because it's at Universal, or maybe it had something to do with someone at Universal made them, just did in-house.
No.
Is it an in-universe company?
Is it Maru, as in Tokyo Maru?
It might be an in-universe. It's Globo Shem Defences. There we go. George Trevor, home or away?
Well, I'm going to have to do what everyone's wanted me to do a long time in the Resident Evil community and go away.
What is the name of the first aid sprays in Operation Raccoon City?
Do you know what? I don't even know, but that doesn't actually feel like it's a hard question. What's the name of the make? But they were Umbrella Pharmaceuticals. What's the name? It's not going to be Umbrella then. Like, you mean like the company that makes them? Umbrella Pharmaceuticals? I don't know. No, that's my answer.
Cineteropia. Okay. Stars Tyrant, home or away?
Which is the Canon ones? Home.
Okay. On what day was Raccoon City wiped off the map?
October 1st.
There we go. Point to Stars. Batman, home or away?
Home, please.
Home. What is Jill's code name in Lost in Nightmares?
Eagle 6.
Oh, I'm afraid that's incorrect. It's Eagle 5. So you lose a point there. Back to Mr. Spencer, home or away?
Home, please, Chief.
When in 1998 was martial law imposed on Raccoon City?
I think we've had this question before. This was when people were like, oh, is it martial law? I actually don't know the answer. I think it was like 22nd or something, I don't know.
Oh, it's 24th of September.
It was sort of early 20s.
Unlucky. Can't lose any points because you haven't got any. So never mind. George Trevor, home or away?
Away, please.
Okay. Another one.
I can't win unless I keep going.
Okay. In the Wicked Sea of the North.
Ooh. Wait, isn't it Phantom Beast?
Whatever.
Yeah, I want to call out that translation. Go on then.
I would say that PU has it down as canon, I'm not sure. The character Norse is a former military unit member of what group?
Oh.
Can I say this is guessable?
Oh. Sorry.
If we guess, if someone other than George guesses and they get it right, then they get the points.
We'll see. I think George will get it.
Right.
Wait, can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, just repeat the question while I Google that, please, Nick. What is it? Ooh. Oh, it's Delta Force. Oh, just came to me. It's popped into my head.
It's so out of water.
Oh, that's going on the highlights reel.
In the Wicked Sea of the North, the character Norse is a former military unit member of what group?
I don't know, but I'm gonna just, for John's sake, I'm gonna say Delta Force.
NASA.
I'm afraid that's incorrect. The correct answer was SAS.
I was gonna say SAS.
Batman, home away.
Alright, I'll go home, please.
Out of the 4 Raccoon City rivers, which was the only one where no bodies were discovered leading to the mansion incident?
Wow.
Bugger. Circular River.
Correct. Very good. Another point there. Stars Tyrant, home or away?
Home.
In May 1978, one of Marcus's trainees touched a leech and becomes infected. What was his name?
Brandon Bailey.
No, I'm afraid it was Dennis.
Fuck it, I've no idea.
Mr. Spencer, home or away?
Away, we have to gamble.
In which Resident Evil game has Albert Wesker been successfully cloned?
Oh.
Now, that's got to be a bullshit question, hasn't it? Successfully cloned. Could you repeat that just so I get it in my head here?
In which game has Albert Wesker been successfully cloned?
Maybe this is one of those joke questions, isn't it? Where the answer's like, oh, in Vito's crazy fucked up mind, that's where the video game's made, where he's cloned, and the dreams and delusions of the fan base. Maybe it's like a metaphysical question.
I think this came from Rodney.
Well, he was cloned. Would, if I said there hasn't been one, is that an answer?
Can I answer? Because I don't think that's the right answer.
I don't think it's not. I think he's definitely been cloned in something. But cloned in what sense?
No, properly cloned, as in...
I want to buzz in, please.
Really? Properly cloned? He hasn't in any of them. In no game has been cloned. Okay. That's my answer.
That's incorrect, George. I'm going to let you come in on this one.
I feel dirty knowing this, and I hope I've got it wrong. And if I don't, I don't want to take any
it's non-canon, isn't it? There's a Facebook sort of RPG Resident Evil, because that's the only thing I can think of that was something like Resident Evil Dash. But is it called Resident Evil Gree? The Facebook game.
That's
Is that
incorrect,
it?
but a bloody good shout. It's Biohazard Clan Master.
See, I thought of Clan Master when you said Rodney, because I know it's probably I shouldn't have got it right anyway, because Rodney sent me loads of art from Clan Master. But I thought that's a card game, not a video game. I didn't think.
It's a virtual deck building game, though, isn't it?
There we go. George Trevor, home or away?
Away, please.
Okay.
Got
What
that
was the
right.
name of the research program seen in Confidential Report?
I've never played Confidential Report. I read that stupid article thing at PU. Can you just repeat
What
it one more
was the name
time?
of the research program seen in Confidential Report?
Was it multiple nemesis dick? I don't know. Pass. I'll say nemesis report.
Does anyone want to buzz in?
Project MS.
MS virus.
Nick Endine's Bane.
MS is the correct answer, but I was looking for what MS stood for, which of course is Matchless Soldier. That was the name of the program. So there we go. Right, last round of questions. Batman, home or away?
I'll go away.
So he gets this. I think none of us can
That's
win,
correct.
can we?
Don't worry, he won't. Name one of the name one of the viruses seen in Biohazard Clan Master.
Oh, God. Basilisk virus.
Ooh.
How the fuck did you know?
I think
That is right.
He's right. Yeah.
You see, I've got that artwork as well.
Nice artwork. I blame Holbrook.
I need the artwork. Why haven't I been sent the artwork?
It's at Crimson
Is
Head
it?
Elder plugged. It's actually very nice, some of that stuff. It really is.
Basilisk virus or the succubus virus, which is a modified G virus strain for females. There we go. Very good. That puts you on 18 points. Stars Tyrant, home or away? Home. How many individuals were in the Wesker children?
12. That's wrong, isn't it? It's 13.
It's 13.
Oh,
Fuck.
Sean.
Oh, dear.
It's 13. Mr. Spencer, home or away?
We gotta go away again. I have to. Sunny way.
It's another confidential report question. In most Resident Evil games, a first aid spray completely restores health. This is not the case in confidential report. Which item performs this task?
So it's not a first aid spray, which I assume it's not going to be a herb either. Because if a first aid spray doesn't, that's interesting because herbs, the green herb, would not fully restore your health. It would just be, a little bit. So maybe this time around, the green herb, actually fully heals you.
Oh.
That's going to be my answer. It's wrong.
Sadly, that is
no,
wrong. The
we'll go
answer is
with
the first aid spray, SP. George Trevor,
I have to go away.
I think you might get this one. What is the name of the virus seen in Fire and Ice?
Oh, I was just talking about Fire and Ice the other day, where I just basically said it makes no sense at all. It may as well be written in another language. I know it's got Star's Charlie team in it. Can I get a point for that? I've got no idea. Is it the Fire and Ice virus?
Anyone know Stars? Do you know?
G virus.
I think I know what this
Spencer?
is. I know that much. It's based off the G virus. It's definitely some G virus thing in
It's
there.
just the X virus. So that does conclude. Let's look at the final scores. George and Mr. Spencer remain on 0.
What happened? It was what happened this year,
Stars
John.
Tyrant remains on 1.
I'm ashamed of myself for getting that Wesker Children question wrong.
Romby's
Ashamed.
on 2 without doing anything. Well done.
You finished second without even being here.
I tell you what, that earthquake's done well for him, hasn't it? You think
And
about
Batman
it.
finishes with 18 points. Very good.
He has been unstoppable this season.
However, there is now the final round, the mystery guest.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
This is worth 19 points.
That's very specific, isn't it? Very specific number. You know what's funny about that is the fact that it's 1 point more than what John's current total is. It's
so incredible.
It's convenient, isn't it?
It's amazing.
So, it's a mystery guest. So we have 5 clues. The first person to shout with the answer will win.
Oh, this is like waiting up all night for the fucking Brexit vote results again, isn't it?
So, clue 1. I am a man. I work for the Umbrella Corporation.
Morpheus DeVal.
No. I worked in the underground facility.
Martin Crackhorn.
Well, you've had one
I worked
guess.
at the Spencer Mansion.
We are just allowed to shout out names.
Yeah, just shout out names. Yeah. I was killed in September 1998. And finally, I was killed by a Hunter R.
It's an Outbreak one. Motherfucker. Peter Jenkins. No.
Michael something. Martin?
Notice how I've shut up completely.
I know the bloke. He was outside the freezer area, wasn't he?
Yes.
Or something. And I'm sure. I said Martin, but it can't be right.
No, that's right.
He's got a surname.
Yes.
So Martin.
I'd love it if John gets this. I so want him to get this. Please get it right.
Don't fucking stress me.
Let me frantically look up end of the road quickly. Let me stall it enough time.
Martin Franklin. I can't surnames.
There is a timer, but you have 30 seconds.
Martin Walcott.
Oh, there's the point. Batman.
He just comes in there and fucking decapitates John.
Well done, Batman. A deserved winner. Very good. That does conclude the quiz. Let's look at the final scores.
This motherfucker's going to change this year.
Yeah,
and season 4 is going to be a different outcome because I'm getting back into the canon. I am. No, I've been doing it behind the scenes slowly.
It's working.
Ooh. It'll take some time because I'm a bit rusty.
But Stars was right. There needs to be a little bit of quality control in the questions for next season.
So the final scores: Mr. Spencer and George Trevor finish on 0. Stars Tyrant with 1. Batman slightly in the lead with 37. So thank you all very much for playing. I hope you all enjoyed A Question of Biohazard. Join us in season 4 for the return of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So thank you all very much. That does conclude most of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed the quiz. It's a nice bit of fun. Well, that does conclude Series 3 of the Project Umbrella podcast. We will be back with Season 4, probably focusing on any Resident Evil 7 news. And we will see you shortly. So on that note, it is goodbye for me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Batman.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, George Trevor.
And goodbye from me, Mr. Spencer.
Fucking yes, yeah! Next season, but we nailed it.
Looking for the meaning of something.